All right, everybody online, hopefully you can hear us. I am going to ask that you keep yourselves muted. If you have questions, share it in the chat. Alex will be keeping an eye on that and sharing those with our presenters. Welcome, one and all. Thank you for joining us today for our advisor breakfast. We got a couple of folks presenting to you today. For starters, I'm going to turn it over to Paul to chat about PAB Productions. If you've got questions, if you're online, share them in the chat. If you're in the room, stay until the end, raise your hand, whatever it is, speak loudly. Paul will make sure he answers those as best he can. And then we've got our event and meeting services team who will present after that. So thank you all for being here today. Right. You should be able to just click on through it. Okay.
Cool. So I'm Paul Bergonis. I'm the technical ops specialist here at Tempe campus, and I'm also the PAB production manager.
Can you talk a little about it, please?
That's right. The PAB production manager. Yeah, and so I just wanted to just do this brief slideshow to show some of the services that PAB production has to offer for all staff and students and everyone within ASU that needs production. So an overview of the presentation is going to be the roles in production. I think that's important to just kind of touch bases on so that everyone is aware of the different hats worn in production and what goes into production and events. And then some examples of events, and then some of the services that PAB production provides. And then I'll touch on external vendors and just a brief pricing overview. So what is PAB production? PAB production is essentially like an internal vendor for ASU. So we have an inventory of production equipment ranging from audio, lighting, live stream, VR headsets, and everything in between. And I have a staff of 7 going on 10, and they're all trained up to production manage events, be AV techs, operate machinery consoles, and do setups, and just help with all of it stuff. And so some of the different roles in production, or common roles, are stage manager, someone standing by stage, ensuring that the run of show is on time, and helping with those things. And then there's AV techs. So AV tech, for example, in Student Pavilion, assists with Sonita Ballroom with troubleshooting, getting folks plugged into the projectors, getting mics, and then in the MU, similar. And then production managers, the role and the hat that I mainly wear is receiving the event production request and seeing the event from start to finish. And then there's front of house engineer, which is also known as like live sound engineer, is the person mixing the audio for the audience and sometimes also for the live stream. And then a monitor engineer is in it similar, but just controlling the sound coming from stage. So if there's stage monitors, or if people on stage have in-ear monitors, they would control those signals. And then an LD, or a light designer, is an operator, a tech that programs lights for colors and can program them to use on the board to make custom cues or to create presets and to change throughout the show. So if there's speaking, then there's a spot, and then if there's a performance, then the lights move. And then there's stagehands, which are additional support to help load in, load out, set up, run to grab equipment. And yeah, so there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to production. Those are just a few. So I just want to go into event examples. So we do a lot of events on the MU North stage. And so there's an integrated AV system there just for audio right now. And we own the kit that allows you to pass audio through the overhead speakers. So if you want to just play music or have a speaking event or a DJ, that's helpful. But if you have a larger event like speaking, DJ, and a band performance, then we can set up a PA system, kind of like a traditional stereo PA system, two tops and two subwoofers and mic package and stands, and make that happen. If your event's in the evening, we also have some lighting packages to light up the stage for front wash so that you can see those on stage. Cool. And then in the Cine Ballroom, it's pretty much a turnkey system, but my staff is able to accommodate a lot of different setups that go on in there. Even if it's something simple, it's usually nice to have an AV tech on standby in case you're like, I don't have an HDMI cable, or it's not connecting for some reason, and they can help poke around in the computer and help out with that. But yeah, anything from a presentation, one microphone, up to a full-on production with iMag and different display control, live streaming, everything. We can do it in Cine Ballroom. So here's an example. We did a fashion show where the stage was extended forward, and our LD adjusted the lights so that you can see the runway and play different cues, different lights for music. And we had the whole crew on that, and it turned out to be a success. And then for graduation, we had Fan Effects, which is an external vendor, and we helped tie them into the system. A lot of different network patch and audio lighting patches. And then my staff here on the screen is mixing for the audience, and then also sending the mix to broadcast that goes to ASU Live, and then also controlling the lights, and then also sending an audio feed to the closed caption person. We also do events in the MU. This is one that we did for Cheney. Again, there's a lot of different news broadcast folks there, and we were able to provide the audio pool, the wireless feeds, and send audio to broadcast. And that was also a success too. And in the MU, you may know that there's pretty much just overhead speakers in there to hear audio, but we can bring in PA systems. Like in this one, we brought in a PA system and a mic package, and we also provided front wash lighting and uplights to kind of just up the eye candy when you see it on screen. This was a new event space, the Nelson Fine Arts Plaza, also known for the Pringle lights that light up. That's just west of the MU North stage. And we had brought in front wash lighting, a PA system. There was a mini music festival. And then in the slide, if you ever want to book that space, the contact information for Kayla is in there, and she can help arrange that. And then we've done events on the SCFC field. This photo is from International Night from the fall. And this one, there's a lot of bullet points on this because there's a lot that went into planning that. So there's staging, lighting, audio, live stream, photography, videography. We had a drone to capture a video. There was logistics with fire marshals and getting the lights turned off so then we can bring in our own lighting. Coordinating with ASU PD and security, bringing generators for power, lots of different permits, an LED video wall. And I do have the sizzle reel that we captured of that whole event here that I like to share. Here. Yeah, so shout out to Jam and Robin for helping be the star team between the three of us who managed to pull this whole thing off. And I started back in August, and this was the first like major event, and I'm really proud of it. I think we all are. And yeah, so this is a sizzle reel. So if you want to get something like that for your event, we can help out. Cool. So some of the PAB production services. There are different photos here. So live sound is a big one. Lighting, if you need a lighting operator to work through cues for your event. Live streaming to ASU Live, Zoom, YouTube. With ASU Live, we collaborate with Jim's team, and it's pretty straightforward with working with him. So if you want to do that, we just loop them in, and there's different pricing that goes into that, but we can work through that as it comes. And then we have movie night kits with a projector and screen. We have two different sizes, a really big screen and then a medium screen, and different levels of projectors. So there's options. And then event lighting. So that was at PV Beach, where we could set up lighting, and they had activities around, and it just ended up really adding vibe in there. We also do equipment rentals. So if you need to do a voiceover for your training module that you're putting together, we have a USB microphone. If you want to capture video, we have camcorders and SD cards. If you want to rent VR headsets, we have those. If you just need a speaker on a stick, anything and everything, just reach out. And then furthermore, we offer troubleshooting, like existing systems, which I did at Sunita Ballroom, and we're working on at the MU. There's a lot of stuff to troubleshoot over there. And then equipment repair. If you have a speaker and you're like, well, I already have a speaker, but it's kind of busted, I can help coordinate either assisting to look and assess it, or getting the right vendor to help swap parts and get it up and running. We also do stage backdrops. That's a mod scene backdrop that we did in Sunita during comedy show, and we build all that. And then there's the VR experience. That's my son playing VR in my office. And then maintenance. If you just have something in your office or in your facility and you're like, hey, can you take a look? We can help out with that. Like, this is a photo of the projector in Sunita Ballroom. So when I came here, I noticed that, and I changed the filters, and they're washable and reusable. So just clean that and put it on a maintenance schedule. And then coordinating with vendors. And that one I'll touch on, I think, in the next slide. Yeah, so external vendors. PAB Production has a list of preferred vendors that are approved to work at ASU. They're preferred because they're used often, and they give really great pricing when working through PAB Production. I have great relationships with them thus far, and they've been really accommodating with just about any budget. So when you do reach out with XYZ and a dollar amount, I usually factor in all the expenses, and then I get to them with a different lower dollar amount, and I say we need XYZ, and they make it happen. They're really great. So we collaborate with vendors. This is a video wall. There was a request for a giant video wall in Cine the Ballroom. And it was really cool because the vendor that came through to operate it was, industry guys that work on big tours, and so them bringing their talent and their skills in becomes a learning experience with students, and also elevates the event quality here at ASU, which is really cool, I think. We collaborated with a vendor on this to just add some additional lighting on the sidewalls of Cine the Ballroom, because otherwise it's just really dark. But just adding some extra texture, it's like it wasn't expensive, but it made a huge difference, I thought. And this is also a photo of the iMag, or image magnification, which we weren't live streaming, but we just used a camera operator to capture that little person on stage so that people back here can see it a lot easier. If you've been to a big arena or something, it's really nice to have that screen so you're not squinting the whole time. Yep, and then this, again, I mentioned that with fan effects. So with vendors in lighting, typically I ask for renders, which is a digital rendition of what the event would look like. So here's some examples of like a lighting render. The software that they use takes the make and model of the light, and so it shows true in the render of its like brightness and look. And so that's really neat, and I think it's important to consider when you're dealing with a lot of money, and they just give you a quote, but it's like, I want to see it. Like, I'm a visual person, and so if they're like, well, I'm going to put cheaper lights, and they send me that, I'm like, that's cool. I don't care if it's the cheaper light. Like, that looks great. Let's roll with it. And then this is a render of the international night showing the LED balloon lights. And this was really important to show the fire marshals of how many lumens the lights can produce to justify turning off the field lights. And kind of also the layout too, and it helped all the other vendors just know where things should go, rather than like using MS Paint to drop a diagram. And yeah, so a little about pricing. So my team and I work pretty hard with building and trying to make things as easy as possible, like building packages, rather than doing like one-offs or itemized things. There's been enough frequent events and requests that we've just bundled things up to just make it easy, with labor included up to a certain amount of hours, which usually covers the event. And it's really good in that regard. PAB Production, we are always price checking and price matching the market rates to ensure that we are 20% under their rates. Again, we're an internal vendor for ASU. We don't want to be hiking up prices for everyone. When using PAB Production for your event, if we can't provide the equipment that you're requesting and we need to outsource to another vendor, we charge a 15% coordination fee, and that fee then pays for the production management and me coordinating and the back and forth. That way you don't have to learn all this new terminology and have to worry about it. You can just entrust in me, and I can take care of it all. And earlier I mentioned that when you give a budget amount, I factor in the numbers. That's part of what I factor in to make sure that even after all the costs, that we don't go over budget. And then with rentals, we have, again, packages for that too, so that you're not getting a camera but no SD card and no tripod. So we have different packages there. And yeah, I think I touched on all that. And that is all. Thank you all for your time.
Any questions for Paul? Yes.
Is there a minimum, number of attendees, that, you know, this would be appropriate for? Because it looks like we don't really have a max, some of this. Really. Also, is this, service just available on campus? Because, I am the advisor to our photography assistant. And we do events at grad student studios, where our graduate student studios are, and our photography galleries. And also you do consultation, like if we real, like we're gonna need certain equipment on launch. Would you help us figure out what each actually purchase, if that seems to work out?
Yeah, so a few questions there. The answer is no, there's no minimum or maximum amount of attendance. You could have no people here, but if you want the equipment, we can help out. The second question is if it's just for campus or just here. I need to actually update this because recently PAB Production has kind of spread to other campuses in the sense that I'm supporting production for West, Poly, Downtown, and Tempe. That's very new, and so with Battle of the Bands that just happened with PAB, that was the first time PAB Production collaborated with the other PABs, and it ended up elevating the entire experience. And so we got a number of students who were interested, and so there are plans to then build a PAB production of student workers and an inventory at other campuses. But for right now, depending on what the request is, I've just been driving equipment over and then having the event and then bringing it back to our inventory here. So right now that's just kind of a case by case, but I would say the answer is yes. And then remind me again, what was the last question for rental?
Yeah, can we have the details of the vendors, please?
We'll come back to that in just a moment. The final question over here was consultations.
Oh yeah, there was a bullet point in there for consultations. Definitely feel free to reach out. If you're like, hey, we have this old speaker, we would like to update it or upgrade it. We have preferred vendors that get great pricing rather than just going through Amazon or purchasing it on your own. And I can help direct you to some quality stuff that can check a lot of boxes all in one speaker rather than getting a mixer and all this other stuff.
Because we might
so yeah.
not know what we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then also, do the clubs get help with funding through Sun Double Sync or something like that, or even fees?
So registered student organizations can apply for operational funding. There is a limit of $600 per semester. That is all handled fully through undergraduate student government or GPSA, depending on kind of which organizations you're working with, which students it's supporting, that sort of a thing. The process does need to be submitted by students, but they can find all those details on the GPSA website, the GPSA Sun Devil Sync page, or the undergraduate student government funding website.
Yeah, and in my questionnaire, whenever I get a request, one of the line items in there is what is your budget funding deadline? That way I can get quotes and get numbers in a timely fashion for them to have time to apply for funds in that window prior to the event.
And this service is not just for our student clubs either, correct?
Right. Yeah, we deal with ASU student orgs, outside clients like Wells Fargo's doing something at the MU. They need additional production and they'll reach out to us.
All right. I do want to make sure we have time. Thank you very much, Paul. That is wonderful information. We really appreciate it. Want to make sure we have time to get to our other set of presenters as well. So we're going to go ahead and transition to them. If you do still have questions for Paul, feel free to reach out to him directly. Feel free to reach out to myself directly, Christopher Watts, and I will forward that information to Paul or forward his contact information to you.
That is on the first slide.
It is on the first slide. So these presentations will be available on our YouTube channel next week. You can find it there and find Paul's information directly as well through that also. So thank you again, Paul.
Thanks.
Now let's turn it over to our other set of presenters. Yes, thank you, Paul. We have event and meeting services here as well. So I'm going to turn things over to their team.
Awesome. Hi everyone, how you doing? Good energy. Good energy. Well, we're excited to be here today. We are Event and Meeting Services, which is a department or unit within our unions and centers division. So we're going to talk through a couple of things today, including an introduction of us in just a moment. But we want to give an overview of what our office is, what we do, what our focus is. We want to kind of give some highlights looking back. What have the past 6 months looked like in our office in particular? And then looking forward, what are some things that are on our radar or that we've been working on that will affect how our work happens moving forward? And then just some common questions or procedure information. I would say some themes of information that we see or have a common conversation about. There are a lot of nuances to the work that we do, and so there is a high likelihood we won't get to every single small piece of information. So at the end of the presentation, our contact information is there as well. And as time allows, we'll be able to field questions too. But let's do a quick round of introductions. My name is Sarah Strominger. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the program manager for Event and Meeting Services. And I'll let my team introduce themselves as well.
So I'm Anthony Verlander. I'm the event coordinator senior. So I kind of book a lot of spaces. I do a lot of face-to-face meetings or Zoom meetings with our student orgs and faculty.
My name is Sylvia Levels. I'm the newest event coordinator for the Memorial Union and Student Pavilion. I also facilitate bookings for both locations. Hey.
Awesome. So let's do a quick overview for those who may be newer or haven't worked with our office as much. What is Event and Meeting Services? I tend to refer to us as the kind of the intake center of requests for use of space. We are the first formal step of a reservation process for use of space within the Memorial Union, most spaces within the student pavilion here, as well as many of the outdoor spaces that are directly connected or near our buildings. So that's everything from a small, 5-person meeting room to have an organization meeting, all the way up to maybe a 1,200-person event in the Sonita Ballroom. We also work with student organizations connected to regular tabling events or outdoor events as well. Our team is also creating and enforcing policy and procedure, whether that's campus and university policy, or if that's office related procedure around the way that reservations can be made, spaces can be utilized, and what we're able to offer within the spaces that we have. And then supporting our clients. Both of the event coordinators talked through meeting with clients. We're regularly talking with those who want to utilize our space about logistics, what can and can't work in the spaces. When do you need to get the fire marshal involved? How many people can actually fit within a particular space with an ideal setup? So we're navigating all of those sorts of conversations. And we work with student organizations, faculty and staff and departments on campus. We also work frequently with non-ASU partners as well. So we have a wide range of clientele in the spaces that we manage. Anything y'all would jump in on about office? Okay, perfect. So we want to give a little snapshot of what, especially the past 6 or 7 months, have looked like in our office. If you've worked with our office in the past, you have probably felt and experienced some of the transition and change along with us. You see 3 of us up here. All 3 of us are new within the past 6 or so months, and new to the office and new as professional staff to ASU as well. So there has been a lot of learning and growing and understanding ASU culture and understanding events and meeting services and in understanding our systems that we have as well. We've also transitioned to a new reservation management system. So many of you have worked with the system EMS, same name as our office. And that system was phased out this past summer, and we have been using a system called Mazevo since. Very similar in capacity, but a new system for our team to learn and grow into as well. We've also experienced growth of our student team. So in January, we were able to add 3 more student staff to our office team, growing from 4 to 7, which has been really helpful. We've also taken a look at what are their job responsibilities, how can we sort of increase their capacity and their understanding of our work so that they can, continue to help and support us in the ways that are needed. The bullet point not on here that I'll also highlight is that in this past 6 months, we've both tried to maintain and move forward while also ensuring that we're assessing our systems and our policies and our procedures. What has been our workflow in the past and what's going to work for us now? What are the policies that made sense before that maybe don't make sense now? And what are the updates and changes that we need to make? And when, in order to ensure that our work can be effective and that programming in our spaces can be effective as well. Oh yeah, go ahead.
One thing I did want to note, we get a lot of questions from the switchover from EMS to Mazevo.
Yeah.
I guess a lot of people used to be able to access a live calendar of what was booked and what wasn't. So right now that live calendar doesn't exist with Mazevo. That may change soon, but as of right now, there is no public calendar to see what spaces are reserved or available.
Yeah, that's a good note. We know that's a feature that people enjoyed having access to, and we are trying to figure out a solution that allows for appropriate amount of access to information in the way that we can share that public calendar. That's a little bit more complicated with the current system than it was. But we have some solutions in mind as well. So very good.
Anything to add in? You know, we have a lot of new policies that we are working on bringing to our process. We'll do our best to communicate everything as it changes to organizations that reach out for reservations. I know we were discussing the, I don't know if everybody's aware of that policy, the having to pay for after hours. I think that was
I'm not sure. Well,
oh yeah.
yeah. Cool. I want to give a snapshot of numbers and some just kind of high level information about reservations in our spaces. So fall 2022, so we took July through December of 2022, we had just under 4,500 confirmed bookings held, or events, unique events held within our spaces. So you can see the breakdown here of Memorial Union, Pavilion, and then our outdoor spaces. So, and outdoor includes both tabling, but then maybe large scale or special events that occur outside as well. For some context, the number in fall 2021 was 2,400. So we are seeing an exponential increase in the amount of reservations and outreach that our office is experiencing. These numbers are scaling higher than fall 2019, which would be maybe what we would compare as our most typical set of numbers. Obviously pre-pandemic, when a lot of things changed and affected the way our spaces were used. So we're not only back on track, but functioning at a higher level or a higher capacity in some ways than we were even pre-COVID. So it's interesting to see, and it's good to see. We want our spaces to be utilized, and I think that's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and to add kind of additional context to this, it's not like a hard number that we have. Like Mazevo keeps track of all this, but for a couple of months last semester, we were receiving up to 50 requests a day from all orgs across campus.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we do receive a lot of requests, and like at times, because of like who comes first, we aren't able to accommodate all requests, but we do receive a lot more than just what's confirmed. So.
Definitely. Yeah. This only reflects confirmed, able to be made reservations. So that's, yeah, the number would be much higher if we included those. Okay. So with that in mind, we want to give a quick snapshot looking ahead, what's next for EMS and what have we been working on. We're not limited to these three things, but I think these three things are maybe most compelling for this particular group and audience. One of our current projects that is set to launch any day now, I'm guessing early next week, we will see this launch, is a new reservation request form. So our current form on our website is okay, but we've assessed, what information would be more helpful for us to have immediately when an event is requested that we don't have in our form right now. For example, our current form doesn't account for setup and teardown time for an event. So we're often having to ask that supplement the time that's been requested, unless a client happens to know that they might want to add that in. And that sometimes creates barriers if we can't add that additional time that a group knows they needed, but didn't think to put on the form. So that's an example of one prompt that we're adding in that isn't already accounted for. We're expanding some of our AV audiovisual questions and working closely with Paul and PAB to create a better loop of communication. So that way we're not having to send clients separately to Paul when we might be able to just collaborate on information that we're already sharing. The second project that is in the works is our website updates. So we do have information that has changed. We have just new ways of communicating information that we'd like to present on our website. And so we are taking a close look at every page that's connected to the MU Pavilion and our outdoor spaces for both small updates, but any large change updates as well. We want to make sure information is consistent. And that's in collaboration with a larger Unions and Centers project as well. So all of the student centers that exist on the 4 ASU campuses in this area have also been in communication with each other around how do we create consistency so that if someone's hosting an event downtown, maybe the process or the policies or the protocol doesn't feel drastically different from Tempe, from Poly. So we're excited for that. And those have been slow rolling out. Some changes have already happened, but we are looking at some additional updates. The final project I'll highlight, and one that we're really excited to test out, is what is called the requester process for space. So our system, Mazevo, has capacity to allow for users of Mazevo to essentially see a calendar of availability and be able to say, I want Arizona Ballroom from 7 until 9 p.m. on X date, and a student leader or a user of Mazevo could put that on the calendar and enter into an approval process that ultimately gets reviewed by our team, but that space is then held in that moment through the system that we utilize. Right now, our process from start to finish is a manual process, right? Someone has to submit the form, it has to be routed to our inboxes, we have to review it, we have to open the calendar, click to find the date, plug it in, hope it works, communicate back if it doesn't. There's a lot of steps in our current process, and we are looking for efficiency that also creates better consistency, and that just helps out across the board. So we are finalizing the structure for a pilot project to test this requester process, see if it works, figure out what we need to nuance before we might launch that campus-wide and or campuses-wide if we can extend that out to the other ASU campuses. So we're very excited about this. We think it will make the reservation process easier for clients and users of our space, but also for our team. And it will just make certain things a bit more clear right from the start. So very excited for that. If as you're hearing this, you're like, the group I work with might really benefit from testing this out. We're high users of spaces, or, this is something we want to navigate. Feel free to let me know after this. We're going to do a small group for our initial pilot process, but we're still vetting groups that might make the most sense. So please feel free to reach out if you think your group might be a good option. Anything else y'all would add in about these or other projects or things that are on our radar? Okay, cool. Okay, so now we're going to jump into a few, what I would say are common questions or common sort of topics of conversation that we're having with student organizations, but all users really of our spaces, along with some highlights of our current processes. So how can student organizations request space? Our online form is the best way to provide our office information so that we can move then into the process of actually making the reservation. We do occasionally field phone calls or in-person visits, but generally those are reserved for something has glitched within our system, something has been missed, and we're needing to do a more urgent response. Phone call or drop-in to create events is generally not the way that works best for our office when it comes to events that are being planned more proactively, for example. So those online forms, there's a separate one for indoor space versus outdoor space right now, are going to be the best way. Yeah, the reservation form is needed before a reservation can be processed. So even if someone were to drop in person and we say, sure, we'll work on this, but we need you to submit the form before we can actually finalize anything. And then just a reminder that advisors are not eligible to submit reservation requests on behalf of RSOs. We want you to support your student leaders in making those requests happen. You're welcome to follow up with questions, but ultimately, if a form is submitted by an advisor, we're going to respond back and say, please have one of your registered or your like designated student leaders complete this so that we can move forward with it. That can create delay in ultimately a reservation being made. So we want to make sure that that's clear as well.
Also on this, so if the officers of the student org are making the request, so one thing we do get a lot is people that are members of the club, but not a registered student org on Sun Devil Sync. So we do back check Sun Devil Sync to make sure they're an officer. If they're not, we can't make the request. Additionally, anybody in the org cannot make a request for outside organizations. So outside organizations, if a student org does want to work with them, they have to have the outside organization approach us, and then we can partner their organization with the outside organization.
Yeah, there's a process for that. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Can another student club reserve a space for other club, but they are collaboration? Or if no collaboration at all, but they want to sponsor the other club, would that happen?
So generally, you're not like a club is not supposed to reserve for like another organization. If they're collaborating together and that club is going to be there, they're hosting the event, but the other club is going to be present and also do programming in the space with them, that is totally fine. Generally, we wouldn't allow like a club to reserve on behalf of another club and that club only uses the space.
Yeah, it really depends on presence and who's helping to plan. Yeah, I'm sure there are exceptions we could think of, but as a general practice, that's the case. Yeah.
Is there a, I hate to use the word guaranteed,
You're good.
turnaround for requests for tabling space?
Tabling spaces,
Our
yeah,
club has had some issues with that.
sure.
Your club.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Typically, those are responded to within 2 business days. We need at least that amount of time to be able to process, review that we have the space and respond back.
I don't mean to be picky.
No, you're good.
48 hours, I mean, it just seems,
Yeah.
yeah.
For tabling in particular, those tend to be processed more quickly because more members of our team are able to look at those and process those. The more complex an event gets, the less people on our team who kind of look at it or work with it. But yeah, tabling tends to go quite quickly.
Is there any place for last minute, they just show up and they want to do a table? Is that ever possible?
So generally, we do require that 48 hours to book it. Dependent on how much space is available is kind of what it comes down to. There is a late fee for that if they do want a table like day of, but there's a lot of chances where they could be turned away because of how much space we have.
How much is that fee?
$30.
30 for the, yeah, 30 for the last minute.
So if
table.
space is available, they wouldn't do that, they can do it in space.
Yeah. Yep, that's just a matter of chance at that point. Most days were full. And especially we've had some sort of what feels like pop-up construction. So that's limited some of our spaces too. So we've had to be a bit flexible there.
Pop-up construction.
Yeah, it feels like pop-up. I'm sure I know someone knows what's going on, but we don't. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
So one other thing with outside tabling requests too, we do get a lot of orgs that request multiple tables on their request. For orgs, we only allow 1 table, 2 chairs with their tabling space, mostly because that's what will fit in there. We've had some come back and say like, well, this is a special event. And if we know it's a special event, in that case, we would put them in a different area, not like a normal tabling space. They would be in one of our lettered spaces like ABC. It goes all the way to D,
Yeah.
E, F, G,
Yeah,
something on this side over here. And those can accommodate multiple tables, but the multiple tables would come from like another or like moving an event service if it's like a special event.
If
Yeah,
they bring their
there's
own
some
tables.
nuance.
They're allowed to bring their own tables.
They can do that.
Yeah.
But you still have to reserve the space.
Yes.
Correct.
So nothing changes if you bring your own.
Nope.
Correct. Yeah, just that we're not providing it essentially. Yeah, go ahead.
So, our student organization has been, submitting a tabling request about every 2 weeks. And our experience has been the last 4 or so requests, we've been, submitting it, so there's a partial day, I'm sure you can't get to it right away.
Sure.
And 3 full business days,
Sure.
then a partial day, then we get a response, so
Sure.
it's closer to 4. Maybe if you add it all up, 4 full business days.
Sure.
3 full ones in between.
Yeah.
I think that's what we've experienced.
That's what it takes as well.
Sure.
So I'm not trying to, you know.
No, you're good.
All I was gonna say was, can we submit, I know that, I think usually, if I remember correctly, you can only submit 10 days ahead of time.
Mhm.
Are we allowed to submit extra early just to accommodate for that?
You can submit earlier. In fact, I would say that 2 business days is like, oh shoot, we forgot to submit this.
Yeah.
2 business days is like our tight timeline, right? So the earlier, the better. Now that comes with, we do have some policy that's not outlined here. And I do want to make sure we get to some of the other slides quickly before we finish up. But, you know, we do have some restriction around how many tabling reservations can one organization hold at a time, or how many spaces can be held at a time. So we balance this proactive outreach with, there's a certain limit to ensure everyone has as equitable of access as possible. But yeah, early would be great.
Yeah. and
Yes.
Also with that, with like our student staff, if they see multiple requests in, they might put in like the first 10 dates, and they might send an email saying
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, you already got 10 dates.
Mhm.
If you could just reply saying like, well, can you hold this onto this until the next one? Because
Mhm.
I know some of them might just say, okay, you maxed out your dates, and then you're good for now, and then kind of delete the request. But if we can get like a notice like, hey, this was meant to just hold, so that you know what dates are coming up past those 10 dates,
Mhm.
we'll hold on to it, we'll save it,
Well,
and then
good.
we can look into it.
Yeah. I will stay connected to processing time. You know, as we as a team are locking in more in these like 6 months working together, as we're nuancing some of our policies, these timelines are getting tighter and tighter. We also have, you know, if people are sick, I had to be out unexpectedly for 2 weeks, that affects our workflow a little bit. So we expect a little bit of wiggle room while our process is completely manual. But all to say, if you're running into like, we're surprised we haven't heard back yet, please reach out to our office. We'll navigate that. We've had the glitches of you submitted it. We can see you have that submission, but it's not in our inbox, or something got lost, or something got moved, right? That's not common, but we want to make sure we're accounting for all of those scenarios as we're following up with you all. And we don't want it to sit and like hope we're just waiting on it. If you're feeling, or your students are feeling like something's not connecting right here, come visit our office or outreach to us, because we want to figure out what's going on. Yeah.
And kind of one comment on outreach as well. I notice a lot of people just email like the reservations inbox email
Mhm.
when they're like trying to follow up on something.
Mhm.
If you want to CC any of us on that, it
Yeah.
might facilitate like a quicker reply.
Mhm.
Just because the reservation inbox, when it's full and we are in those peak times of getting many requests a day, some emails could get missed when it's like from a person and not the reservations form.
Mhm.
And it's usually our students that do go through that inbox.
Mhm.
So if it goes to them and they don't like forward it to us, it could get missed.
Yeah.
But
Just the way
if
it
you
is.
CC us, we'll have a
Mhm.
quicker response for you that we can.
What was your
Mhm. We'll see
question
it
in the
first.
blue?
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to clarify, so if we apply 10 days before, it's like, is it too soon, or can we do that? Just because we've had recently it approved like the day of, and it's like a little too last minute for students to pull themselves together that day. Say if students had the reservation wasn't gonna get filled. So do you have like a desirable date? Like, how many days is the perfect recipe for success?
Oh gosh, as early as possible. I mean, that 10 business days again is like our, like 10 business days is the absolute minimum that we need to process room requests. Yeah, so it can happen 10 before, but I would call 30 days really ideal, if not more. The larger the space you need, or the more complex the event, the more time we need. Yeah. Oh, for tabling, yeah, I would say give us that 10 business days ideally, but you know, we're typically managing those in 5 business days or less at this point. Yeah. I'm going to push through a few of these other slides just in case there's information that we haven't talked through yet. And I know we're approaching end of time. Reservation timelines. We've talked through most of these. The one that I'll highlight, and obviously team jump in on any others, all final event details for our office are needed at least 7 days in advance of the event. So this is helpful for us because we're not the end point of a reservation. Our operations team takes over looking at that information, making sure their team can set it up. If there are questions about seating or staging or anything, we need that time to be able to ensure that they're staffed properly and that we have that buffer for any questions. So, you know, if it's a smaller event, a meeting space for an executive board meeting, generally there's not a lot of details that we're worrying about. So that 7 days or 5 business days in advance really helps us have the right amount of time for our staff to know what they need in order to schedule and to be present in the building. But for any more complex events or events that have a lot of moving parts, again, more time the better to make sure that we can meet with you or communicate with you and your students as much as needed to make sure things are clear for our operations team.
We are working on proactively contacting people with events that are on a larger scale to make sure we work out those details.
Yeah.
But if you are able to provide as much detail as possible in your event setup requests, there is a section where you can put as much detail as you would like. That would really help like streamline the process a lot more smoothly. I did also want to add that another thing we seem to be coming up with being an issue is there not being a space on a requested date and no alternate dates being listed. So if on your initial request you can add alternate dates, that would help us find a room for you that would work much sooner.
Yeah, that's good. I want to give a quick snapshot. What happens after a space request is submitted? Many of you may know this if you've worked with student orgs, but there are some kind of updates or modifications to our process that I'll highlight. So again, manual process. So form is submitted, it's coming to an inbox and being routed based on the type of event to the appropriate kind of event coordinator or EMS associate or student staff. Our team members would reach out directly if there are questions, if there's an issue with dates, if a space that's been requested seems too big or too small for what you're planning for, to try and make sure we kind of get you into the right space for what you're trying to do and plan. The request, if the request is able to be accommodated, we're sending out information about that reserved space through Mazevo. As we get questions about, I feel like I haven't heard anything, I haven't gotten a confirmation, the majority of the time, the confirmation is actually in the student's inbox and it's maybe been routed to a spam folder or they saw it and didn't realize it's the confirmation. So that's an important check to do. That reservation information shows the room, the time, the event number, which are office references, as well as any equipment or setup needs that might have been determined. We've moved to a process of kind of 2 different statuses once we've been able to put a room into the schedule, either confirmed or details pending. Confirmed for us means we seem to have all of the information that we need. We feel confident that our next step, our operations team can take this on and plan and set it up and be ready to go. Event is in a confirmed status. And then if there are updates, we need to hear that back from the primary contact and organizers for the event. Details pending means there's information that we still need, either something was missing or maybe there are details that we need to understand to make sure we're best prepared for the event. And so we're sending a separate kind of message with what's needed in order to be able to resolve that. Details pending can also mean, okay, we've collected that information and now our team needs to finish plugging that in or finish any follow-up questions before we will put it into confirmed. Internally, confirmed means it's set to go. We're expecting no changes or no additional information. So details pending, the space is reserved, it's held, but we just need a little bit more information or to update it before we move it to confirmed. We are no longer doing what was formerly a tentative process and then requiring a signature or a reply back in order to officially hold the space. At this point, we're assuming if you're submitting it, you need it, and you've given us the information that's correct. So we're reducing the amount of email back and forth steps before we hit that confirmed status. So again, there's probably exceptions to that, some nuances, but overall, and really for student orgs, we're not looking at a situation where we're requiring some sort of contract signage through our office in order to confirm and solidify your event. I see we're right at time, so I'm gonna pause. You let me know how to best move forward.
We have some more slides.
A couple, but we can, all the information is there too, so we can.
So for those who do have other things that you need to go, we
Yeah.
do appreciate you being here. We understand you've got to move on. We will have the entire recording available on our YouTube channel next week. Easiest way to find the YouTube station is just student engagement at ASU. It'll come right up. So if you need to be on your way, we understand. We thank you for being here. So go ahead and head on out. We'll go ahead and move through the rest of these slides and open up for questions. For our Cora folks, I am going to work with Sarah and Misty on having Sarah available for you at a Cora meeting as well. So for those who are with our Cora partners, just a heads up on that front as well.
Perfect.
But otherwise, let's.
Great. We don't have much more, so I will just kind of keep moving through quickly. Are there restrictions for when registered student organizations can reserve space? So per the student organization handbook, events and meetings are generally not scheduled during finals week. That matches tabling. We don't do any tabling reservations outside. We have had some sort of, I would say, exception to this rule sort of requests in the past. However, we want to make sure that we're supporting the academic mission and that we're not, you know, kind of going against this mindset and mentality around programming. So organizations could reach out individually if there are exceptions. And then outside of this, there's may be some financial implication if space is requested in a way where it would require us to open our buildings early or keep them open late. There are fees associated. So we'll often work with groups to make sure they understand, here's when the building's closed. If you're here after that, fees apply. But otherwise, there's not necessarily large restriction around use of space. And then food at events is the other thing I'll highlight really quickly. If you programmed with us, you'll likely know this, but just to make sure we're crystal clear, the Memorial Union Student Pavilion and some of our outdoor spaces as well, we hold an exclusive partnership with Aramark, which is one of our on-campus catering sort of venues and partners. So any food that's provided in reservations made through the Memorial Union or Student Pavilion have to work with Aramark. There are very limited exceptions made, and those are generally made if Aramark has a lot of big events happening at the same time and can't accommodate it. It's rarely because of a particular food request, for example. That team asks for as much time as possible, and for students to work with them, they will field conversation and recipes and questions to make sure that they can offer and provide what our students need. This is also for small types of food at events as well, if they want something just quick and grab and go. You can also work with vendors within the Memorial Union. So many of our students will work with Chick-fil-A, or there is a partner Domino's. It's a particular Domino's that is sort of under this umbrella of Aramark and food that can be provided. So just want to clarify that we do get a lot of questions about it. And we want to make sure that you kind of have the knowledge to be able to support your groups and what they need to do and how they can best work with our office in this regard. But the more proactive communication, the better. And that's it for like the big topics. Again, this is by no means every and all policy within our area, but it's kind of the big stuff that we get the most questions about. Our information is here. The link to our reservations website is attached as well. And then I will be able to stay at least for a few minutes if there are any more particular questions, or you can reach out to us and set up time to chat as well. So, thank you all. Appreciate it. Front row seat. So nice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I was just wondering, you mentioned the point about how sometimes student officers have gotten communication from you guys, but sitting in their inbox or spam.
Yeah.
And we as advisors have an opportunity to be in an educational role and help them manage these situations. But if we don't know that they actually received an email, we don't know to educate. And in fact, sometimes we don't even know that this situation is going on. So is it possible for advisors to be copied on the email?
Yeah.
Or somehow notified that a communication has gone out so that we can then say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Advisor, or whatever, or officer, whatever, the student,
Definitely.
Yeah.
more often.
Yeah.
So generally, our practice right now is to CC the advisor only if there's something that kind of like sticks out. But we can change it to be that as a standard, we CC the advisor.
Yeah.
That control. Yeah.
Mhm.
That being said, if we do receive communications from the advisor to kind of coordinate the event, we will direct it back to the students and
Yep.
saying like, the student needs to plan.
Yeah, no, I like that though. I think advisors being connected to what's happening in that organization is going to be really helpful. And if you don't need it, you can delete it, right? But I agree. I think it will be good practice for us moving forward to include you all.
Reach out to request that, or?
Well, I think we'll talk through just implementing that as a standard practice. Again, that's one of those manual steps. So
Yeah.
human error aside, we'll plan to
I
add
think
that in.
In our office too, there is kind of like some advisors of orgs are hands off, and then some are very involved, you know? So that's kind of like, I think in our office, why it was kind of made a decision that we don't need to CC them all the time,
Mhm.
but I mean, it couldn't hurt.
Yeah, no, I think it
So,
will. I think it will help, absolutely. Yeah, really good.
I just want to verify the notification when they submit a request. Is that like automatic response, or is that something that you have to go and pull and send the notification?
We send the notification. So once we review the request form, we plug it into our system in Mazevo, assuming it can be made. And then our next steps are to send a message that either says, your event is confirmed, here's your deadline for any changes before fees might occur, or your event is in details pending, here's the information we need from you, reach out to your listed event coordinator, again, by this date and this time. And that automatically goes to whoever the requester or the listed primary contact is. We have the ability to add secondary contacts and then to manually CC advisors too. So that's generally how that practice goes.
I think also prior to that, when they submit a request form online, there is no, like the form doesn't give them an automatic notification that says like your form was submitted or something like that. So this semester specifically, we've gotten our students in the habit of just going down the line and emailing everybody saying like your request was received, you'll hear back from our coordinators soon.
Yeah. And actually with this new form update that we're doing, the anticipation is that we will now have an automatic, you've submitted a request form, you're getting an email back immediately from a system, not waiting for us to have to respond, which will be really, really good. It will help all of us. So we're excited about that. Yeah.
When I ask my student officers, and they don't even remember what they submitted.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
so, did you get it?
Right. There's no way to reference back to it.
It's very difficult to help that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. That is very much on the radar. We hope, again, I think next week or maybe the week after, but very soon we're in the final draft mode around that form, and that automatic, you've submitted this, will be included. That was a big piece of feedback. Immediately, I think as we were settling in to our systems here, we said, this is a need. We have to figure out how to make this happen. So yeah, very good. Thank you. Thank you all. Appreciate your questions.
Perfect. Thank you all again so much for joining us today. Thank you to all of our presenters. We really appreciate it. This will be on the YouTube channel next week if you'd like to review it or share the information additionally with your students, that sort of a thing. But otherwise, thank you all so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Yes.
I noticed there was a compost on the other side. What did they put in there? This is just an event.
Where's change maker?
Excellent question. Good question. So with composting stuff, paper products, food should be set to go. Plastic items are going to need